our 112th episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Sunday, October 27th, 2019, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. As you can tell, as we're releasing a podcast the day after Indiana is bowl eligible for the first time in what seems like forever, but it's only been a few years. I've got with me Nathan and Matt to recap the Nebraska game, where of course Indiana is now 6-2 on the season, the first time that they have started a season like this since 2007, and arguably the most excited that Hoosier football fans have been since 1993. So I kind of know how you guys are feeling, but how are you feeling early-ish on this Sunday morning? Nathan, how are you after Indiana is now bowl eligible?
Yeah, I mean, look, an impromptu podcast befitting the moment, right? I mean, these are rare. These are, these are like,
Rare.
unheard of. I mean, I don't know. I've never done one before. So obviously, it's for an important occasion, and that's what yesterday was. Saturday is what I'm referring to, of course. It was a fun game. It was close, really, from start to finish. There were ups and downs along the way, and then all of a sudden it ended and Indiana was 6-2. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy. As someone who's been watching Indiana football for about 10 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, I honestly felt like, okay, maybe Indiana will get 6 wins. And if they do, it'll come against Purdue. I mean, that's what we're just kind of accustomed to, except now it's October 27th and Indiana is just playing with house money, I guess, at this point. It's kind of crazy. But I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about the game as we go on today.
Matt, are you containing your excitement as much as you can?
Well, seeing as I just woke up 45 minutes ago, it's pretty contained at this point. I'm sure halfway through the podcast it'll explode again. There was like a good hour and a half yesterday where I had to like catch my breath every like 45 seconds because I was going off about us going to the Rose Bowl to my parents, and they were like, "Please shut up and tell us." They really want to know where we're going for the bowl game, and I'm like, I can't tell you this, but now Jerry Palm has to put us in his bowl projections. The Purdue grad Jerry Palm has to put us in there now, so maybe we'll have a little bit more of a clue about where we're going. But no, I mean, look, I think Nathan hit it on the head. Look, it's October 27th, and we're talking about IU actually being in a bowl game because we have secured bowl eligibility before October has ended. Like, we're looking at this at around Thanksgiving time usually, and we're like, can we beat Purdue? Like, is it possible? Like, Purdue's kind of flown under the radar this year, and they've got a kind of, shifty team. We're 5-6 going to the last game. How many times we've played that back over and over and over again, and now the pressure is off the rest of the season. And so we're going to talk about it a little bit more as the podcast goes on. But I am sure that we are not the only people feeling great about the Hoosier team. I'm sure the team itself is ecstatic, and they probably don't even know what to do with themselves right now, because if you had told them before at the beginning of the year that they'd be 6-2 with a very good shot at beating a Michigan team coming up and a trap game for Penn State, they'd be like, yes, please. So it's happening, folks.
This is the first time. So Indiana secured bowl eligibility on November 3rd in 2007, because that's kind of the last time that we've seen Indiana has been able to get to bowl eligibility a little faster and have a better season than a 6-6 barely squeaking by type of year. But then I think it was October 23rd that 1993 that Indiana started 7-1. So it's crazy to think that now, when you've got you're starting to go back all the way to the Bill Mallory type of eras, that this Indiana football team has already started to. It's just a testament to this Tom Allen, his program, his staff, the way he's gotten his players to buy into everything. And you've heard everyone almost make fun of the love each other stuff, and it's like, yeah, it's all great, it's all fun and games, and until they actually lose the game that matters on the field. And now it's finally paying off. They're able to they're at 6 wins, no matter who those wins have come from. They've won 6 out of 8 games already on the season, and like we've said, it's the first time since 1993 was the last time Indiana secured bowl eligibility this fast into the season, and it's something to celebrate. Even Tom Allen, we've seen a lot of post-game press conference stuff, which that's another topic in itself because he's just doing great things in front of the video camera. But you saw him. He's like the first comments to the team before they sang the fight song was, yeah, it wasn't the best game, but you guys won, and I think that's the bottom line coming from today. So.
And Noah, the funny thing is, you touched on it for a moment there. The LEO motto that Allen brought to IU after the whole Kevin Wilson saga, it was easy to kind of make fun of, right? I mean, we saw a lot of people, famous and not famous, sort of mock Indiana and their football program for that slogan, the LEO slogan. And, you know, it's one of those things where you look at a tough road game like they played at Maryland or at Nebraska, where you don't play perfectly and guys make mistakes, especially when you're playing in front of 90,000 people.
Yeah,
you're gonna have to fight through some things, and you could tell when I was at preseason practices back in August that, okay, who knows how good the talent is on this team? They obviously have some good players who have done well in previous seasons. But almost every single guy was bought into the coaching staff. And it doesn't matter. Like what Tom Allen has taught me this year, just watching each game on a weekly basis, is that talent only goes so far. You need to you're managing 100+ players in your football program, plus all the recruits that you're going after right now. And that might be a list of, I don't know how many dozens. Yes. But everyone's got to be committed to an idea, to a slogan, to a vision. That's what happens at Alabama. That's what happens at Clemson. And Indiana's not one of those teams, but every single player mostly is really bought in. And that's how you overcome some dumb penalties like we saw yesterday. That's how you overcome some mistakes like you saw yesterday. And, okay, it's easy to make fun of LEO when they're 5-7, but now they're 6-2. Who's laughing now?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. Yeah, everybody's bought in, and there was mistakes in yesterday's game. We probably will talk about a little bit about them, even though this is supposed to be a happy podcast, because there's some stuff we cannot glaze over from this game. But look, we went to Lincoln, Nebraska, a place we haven't won in since 1959 now, albeit we haven't played there a whole bunch. But still, the fact stands, we haven't won there since 1959. We went in there. They had a full crowd. They're honoring the black shirt defense, and we took it to their defense. We actually took it to them. Now our defense was less than, it lost its luster a little bit during the game, but our offense showed up. Peyton Ramsey showed out. The guy who lost his starting job at the beginning of the year, who I have slandered to no end on this podcast, went into Lincoln, Nebraska in front of 90,000 people and put on a show, threw for 351 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception that was his fault. Okay, you shouldn't have thrown it behind Wap. It was his fault. But look,
Wap should have caught it.
Yeah, Wap should have caught it, but it was his fault.
There was some bad luck too, right? I mean, the bobble ends up right in the hands of the Nebraska guy. Like, it could have fallen to the ground, but no, it's
no. He's got to bobble it 3 times, and then somehow it lands perfectly in Nebraska's defender's hand. It happens. And look, Peyton Ramsey wasn't the only hero of the game, but 27-40, 351 yards, 2 touchdowns. And an excellent touchdown throw to Ty Freifogel. And you could see him at the line. He was commanding the offense. Whether it was calling audibles, looking over to the bench, making sure everybody was getting the right play call. He was on top of it yesterday, and it was wonderful to see. And we're just so blessed to have him stay at the program. I think this has probably been tackled by every other podcast and probably the national media and Tom Allen himself. But look, in the year of the transfer portal, right? You look at Justin Fields at Ohio State. You look at half of Miami's team. Look, the transfers is a huge thing in college football, and Peyton Ramsey had every right after he was told he's not going to get the starting job to transfer. He was started last year. He was up for the starter 2 years before with Richard Lego. it was his job, and he lost it this summer. And personally, I probably would have deeply thought about transferring, but he looked around the locker room and went, these are my guys. These are my best friends in the whole world. Like, these are my brothers, like you talked about, Nathan, buying in, LEO, like, we love each other. Like, this is what we do. Like, I'm going to sacrifice for Mike. Like, if he actually earned the starting job, the coaches think he earned the starting job, I'm going to stay. And he stayed. And credit to him, because he came back and he has pulled us to 6-2. Look, he has just won 2 straight road games. He is the winner of 2 straight Big Ten road games. We have won 3 straight Big Ten games for the first time since '93, right? And it's because of Peyton. Was his performance lackluster in the Ohio State game? Sure. But now looking back on it now, everybody's performance is lackluster in the Ohio State game because Ohio State's defense is nuts. So, I mean, congratulations to Peyton Ramsey, and he has just written himself into an Indiana folk hero now. And, if he decides to transfer after this year because Penix is going to have the starting job next year, more to him. Honestly, congratulations. And we're not erecting a statue of him or anything outside the stadium, but, he should at least have a plaque somewhere in Memorial Stadium. I think he deserves it at this point.
Yeah, well, what's crazy is that he also had 42 rushing yards yesterday. I mean, he had over 400 total yards. He had a rushing touchdown, 3 TDs on the day, and this is the guy that's your backup. I mean, that's the kind of quality depth that Tom Allen was talking about before the season, and that's what we're seeing, not just at quarterback, but in other positions as well.
Yeah, I've been quiet because I've been trying to look through, and I'm almost there. The last time Indiana actually won back-to-back road games in the Big Ten, and I'm still scrolling through, and I think it's got to be '93.
Well, I think if I remember, it happened recently when they won at Illinois and at Rutgers, and that's just off the top of my head.
That was 2 years ago.
Yes. I could be wrong. So that was back-to-back road games, but as far as 3 in a row, I mean, we're talking 93, and that's 25 years. I mean, time flies, doesn't it? But like 26 years. 93, it's insane. And by the way, you talk about uncharted territory. IU, the last time they won 8 regular season games, I think was 87, and the last time they won 9 regular season games was 67. I mean, these things are possible, and it's crazy to think about. But again, for now, to this point, I think that's what today's about. They're 6-2. It's an impressive accomplishment. And, hats off to everyone, the coaches and the players as well. They've got to go out and execute, and they've done that against some tough teams and some road environments as well.
I would like to talk, because I did rail on the defense a little bit. I talked about how they didn't play their greatest game, and I think we can all agree that it was less than lackluster. But we were complaining about turnovers at the beginning of the year. I remember the first 2 games. You're like, no, it was like, where's the turnovers? Where's the turnovers? Well, they have shown up and shown out in the last couple of games. We've had 4 turnovers in 4 quarters. We're forcing teams to make mistakes, and we're winning the turnover battle. We have won the last 2 games on the road. Maryland wasn't a hostile environment, but this was a hostile environment. They were booing our players when they were injured, okay? This was a hostile environment in Lincoln, Nebraska, and we were forcing the other team to make mistakes. I don't care if it's against a third-string quarterback or whatever, or a second-string quarterback, because that's no excuse because we had our second string up there too. We're forcing them to make mistakes, and our defense is getting timely turnovers, and that is all you can ask for a defense that gives up 500 yards of total offense. Like, if you're going to give up that much, get the ball back, at least when they drive it down the field. And they did that, and they did it enough times to give us enough chances to win the game.
And at least also capitalize on some of the turnovers that they get, because Nebraska fumbled, Indiana scored literally the next play.
Yes.
What was the next thing? Fumble in the second half. Indiana scores a touchdown right after that. So it's also not just the defense getting those turnovers, but it's Indiana actually capitalizing on that, which is something you don't see from the offense. And it's a credit to the entire coaching staff. Just you've got our brand new offensive coordinator that I think is doing a lot of really cool things. And
Kaylin, I love you.
I'll butt into the Peyton Ramsey thing, and everyone was bashing him and just how he's not this guy that Indiana's going to lead and everything. And I've said this, I think, for about 2 years now, and Peyton Ramsey is not a in at least the type of team that Indiana football wants to become. Peyton Ramsey is not a starting quarterback in the Big Ten. He is
No.
a backup quarterback, and it's like that conversation. If you follow the NFL a lot, it's backup quarterbacks are not supposed to be stellar. They're supposed to get you by while your starter is out, and they're supposed to be able to hang on, win a couple games, and basically not make you lose so much that your playoff hopes go down the drain. And Peyton Ramsey has not only done that, but he's won 2 back-to-back road games. He's helped this Hoosier team, because remember, also at the beginning of the year, Penix was in and out too, so he's helped Indiana literally get to these 6 victories, and he's a guy that this entire team definitely owes him a lot of stuff, and it's just really cool to see, especially from him, especially his circumstance. Matt, you talked about a lot, and him being able to come out, perform, and win on these hostile road environments.
Well, can I butt in here real quick? Like, backup quarterbacks, I agree, they're supposed to get you by, but in the small sample we've seen of Ramsey this year, we need to call him stellar. We need to call him stellar. I mean, it's been 150 attempts on the year. He's completing 72% of his passes for nearly 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 3 picks, and that doesn't even include the rushing totals, which, he's accumulated 120 rushing yards and he scored a touchdown there. I mean, that's good enough to start at almost every other program in the country besides your top of the line Ohio States and Alabamas and stuff. So he's been stellar this year. There's really no discussion about it. And will it continue if IU needs him going forward? I'm not sure, but those are numbers we don't see at Indiana from almost any quarterback. I mean, think about that. 72% completion percentage. He's averaging 8.1 yards per attempt. That's insane. And yesterday, neither Nick Westbrook nor Donovan Hale even had a reception, and he still put up 350. So what you're seeing here, if you ask me, is the coach, the offensive coordinator, the quarterbacks, the receivers, they're all linked up. They're all on the same page. It's allowed Ramsey, like you said, Matt, to change the play at the line if necessary. They involved the running backs and the tight ends in the passing game as well. And yesterday we saw IU score once they got into the red zone on all 5 trips. That's the type of stuff that elevates you from a 5-win program to 6 and beyond, which is what we're seeing this year.
And credit to Ramsey. Look, his development has exceeded my expectations, and I'm sure a lot of people's expectations. Look, when we saw him his freshman year, he was a game manager quarterback, right? When we saw him his freshman year, when he came in for Richard Lego, he was kind of, safely throwing the ball around, short 3-4 yard throws, keeping us the game at Michigan State. And then last year, it was kind of like, hey, let it loose, Peyton, and you would see it in glimpses, and then you'd be like, oh, why aren't we doing this all the time? And now with Kalen, the offensive coordinator now, with Kalen DeBoer, we're seeing Ramsey actually being able to let it loose. And this is what Ramsey looks like when you just give him the playbook. We were complaining about it last week. We saw it this week. And look, Nebraska's defense is not the greatest, okay? It's probably one of the worst defenses in the Big Ten. But to be fair, it was a road game, and you're supposed to play better at home. So Peyton did this against this defense. It's a definitely a combination of his experience and the offensive coordinator going, you know what? Heck, let's let him do it. Let's let him play his game. And he did that for 3 total touchdowns and only 1 interception. So good job, Peyton.
I think, and we talked about, and definitely contributing all of the success to Peyton Ramsey for the last 2 games, let alone the rest of the team that have helped him, because we talked about the Maryland game, that the amount of support that he got to help get that Maryland victory out, which if you haven't listened to that podcast, we talked about that a lot. But the one factor that changed from last year to this year, if you think about it, really, the team from last year to this year, the offense didn't change drastically. It's almost the same thing, basically, especially when you look at Peyton Ramsey being in at quarterback. It's almost the same kind of, you got most of the same receivers. Offensive line even lost a few players. You got the same type of running back. The only thing that changed really was the guy calling the shots, Kalen DeBoer. And it's something that Indiana has obviously called out for I don't know how many decades, basically, to try and get a good offensive coordinator. And you had Kevin Wilson, but then going to the head coach, it kind of changed. But you've got now a guy that is capable of being a great offensive coordinator. You pay him a lot of money. He's a guy that's up and coming, and you see now the kind of stuff that he's doing in just over half a season. He hasn't even been here very long, and you also look at Peyton Ramsey's play from last year to this year. It's almost the same kind of stuff. It's those screen plays that it's technically a pass play, but they use it as a run play. Peyton Ramsey's still not throwing the ball down the field a whole lot, but it's being a lot more effective, and that's just a tribute to Kalen himself to try and get that. He's also trusting Peyton, like you said, Matt, to air it out a few times more than just maybe once a game that it's going to be 10 yards over the receiver's head or something like that.
Yeah.
And we really liked this segment last week, and I think we're going to keep it in. A friend messaged me. It was like, hey, I really like this segment. Like, who gets a raise this week? And I think this week it's definitely Kalen DeBoer because it's the same kind of thing. It's the game Ramsey had is not really too far different than what we saw all of last year when Indiana struggled to get 5 wins, and then this year they're winning close games. Peyton Ramsey looks confident. The pocket closes, and there's guys literally breathing on his neck, and he doesn't flinch, and he can still get a pass out. And it's just a tribute to the kind of stuff that Kalen's doing on offense.
I mean, to be fair, they are all getting raises. They all got their bonuses for reaching 6 wins. So
yeah,
I mean, I think Tom Allen got $100,000. You got 1 G's, and then you got Kalen got I think $44,000. So congratulations to the both of them on getting a little bit richer for winning a football game.
But the part I did like the most was how going into yesterday, you heard the football team, everyone, the staff and the players weren't concerned about getting 6 wins. They were just worried about going into Nebraska and getting a victory on the road. And it wasn't about trying to get just that 1 mile marker. They're taking it game by game. They really want to get every single victory. It's not like, and of course we're going to go into Penn State and we're thinking, oh, it's probably not going to be much of a game, much of a chance for a victory. But this team doesn't think so. They're going game by game. They think they can win every single game. And again, the like Nathan talked about, it's something that you can possibly make fun of, but it's working right now. They're 6-2, no matter who they've played, no matter, you can talk about the opponent. Indiana doesn't close out victories against Maryland and Nebraska normally. They're 6-2. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and if you guys don't mind, I would like to spend just a few minutes talking about some other aspects, especially on the offense, that have really impressed this year. Can I just start with Whop Philyor? I mean, who is this guy? Like, you know, we're entering the season saying, okay, Nick Westbrook's a senior receiver out wide, Donovan Hale's senior receiver out wide. They're both like 6'3", 6'4", and they're going to be tough to guard. And here's this dude who's just scampering around like he's 5'10", 5'11" on a good day. He's leading the Big Ten in receptions and receiving yards after yesterday. I mean, the whole conference, and not just in the last month or whatever. I mean, we're talking whole season. He has a 10 reception lead over the next guy, Darrell Stewart from Michigan State. And by the way, the third place guy is David Bell from Purdue, the Indianapolis kid. So you know, you got some Indiana flavor.
You should have come here.
Well, you've got some Indiana.
Should have come to IU.
Well,
look at where those two. Look at where those two programs are.
He might be getting reps here at IU right now. He might be sitting behind. So.
Well, my point though is that this dude Whop, I mean, you just know him by first name. It's like Cher or Adele. Like, this guy is all of a sudden turning into almost like a NFL, you know, a day 1 or day 2 NFL draft pick. He's got speed. He's got good hands. What more can you say about this kid? He had 14 catches yesterday for 178 yards, and we're all just like, all right, you know, we've talked 24 minutes without even getting into that. Like,
I know.
It's unbelievable. And he still has 4 games, maybe, 5 games to go.
I mean, I'm referring to Whop as Cher for the rest of the year. So on the podcast, whenever I talk about Whop, it's going to be Cher. No, Whop is legitimately a superstar. And look, if he stays another year, hold on to your horses, because next year's going to be real special. Because look, whether it's Ramsey or it's Penix, both of them have really good chemistry with Whop. As you can tell, look, 14 receptions, 178 yards. I don't think we can repeat that enough. And his longest reception was 24 yards. I mean, just like 10 yards. He's like an automatic first down every time he catches the ball. Like, it's amazing. Watching Whop is so much fun. He is what makes this offense fun, right? Because our offensive line is going to sit in there and hang in there and give our quarterbacks time to throw. And we're going to talk about the offensive line, I'm sure, in a minute. But that gives enough time for Watt to do his thing, make enough moves in the secondary to get free, and he is our safety blanket. He is always there. He is always open, and the quarterbacks know where to find him. And he is just a luxury to have at this program, and we should cherish him while we have him because he's going to be playing on Sunday soon.
Mm-hmm. I'll even add to this because we talked about, of course, you talk about Nick Westbrook and Donnie Hale, where they're not kind of meeting expectations. But I think coming into the season, those were the two guys that everyone was game planning and scouting and probably putting their best cornerbacks and secondary players on. So that's opened him up. And then you think the game plan has changed for opposing defenses drastically, and now they have to guard Watt Fillier. And then you look at last week where Westbrook and Hale were able to actually have great games and help win a game when Fillier was nowhere to be seen last week. But he's a guy that he was nowhere to be seen because Maryland was actually doing good scouting and they were trying to cover him. Indiana just has so many different receivers. Then you add a guy like Peyton Hendershot that's coming in there. You've got next year, you've got Rashawn Williams coming, which, man, if there's if anyone was nervous about Rashawn Williams, maybe maybe not coming to Indiana. This is 6-2 already. He's ready to come. He's bought into the LEO, which again is another reason why we talked about is if you didn't listen to our interview with Rashawn Williams, the highest rated recruits since they started doing all of these statistics, highest rated recruit to commit to Indiana. He said literally the reason that he chose Indiana was because of the boil it down the LEO, just the way that everyone loves each other in that program. So you've got the amount of receivers that are coming in there, and it's a tribute to Peyton Ramsey. He's able to be successful because you've got the amount of receivers that you've got. Because Ty Freifogel, 4 for 75, and his long was a 38, so he was still getting 10 yards after that. Stevie Scott's still able to catch out of the backfield and run around. Peyton Hendershot had that one big 40-yard catch plus and took a shot too, and then also had that 2-point conversion, which is, man, Peyton Hendershot's also a guy that you could see going in. Tight ends don't usually get drafted day one, so day two, maybe the upper end of day 3 in a couple of years. So, and then you also saw Matt Bjornsson or whatever, and we forgot that he's been injured the whole time, and the amount of weapons that Indiana is starting to getting, and you think of most of those players that we talked about are still on the younger side, and we think about the defense, how they're really young and how they're starting to develop, and how the next few years are going to be really cool. But then you've got, at least if you even want to talk about Peyton Ramsey, if he was the only quarterback and Michael Penix wasn't here, he's still got another year after this. Then you put Michael Penix, who's been injured the whole time, and this is his freshman year, and he's got 3 more years after this. So it's also a tribute to, you never want to look far into the future because you think Indiana football, you can't, you don't want to believe it until you see it. Well, now we're starting to see it. Now you're starting to see the fruits of Tom Allen's labor, the stuff he's talked about, the stuff he said, hey, we're going to come. We're right there in it. We're about to show you what we can do. And they're now doing it. And I think the coolest comment that I heard in some of the post-game press conferences stuff was he was like, hey, I'm going to go, after I look at stuff on the plan, I'm going to call some recruits tonight. And I'm going to say, hey, I told you this is what we're going to do. Did you watch that game last night? Did you watch the game tonight? Blah, blah, blah. And this is what Indiana football is now about. And I think it's here to stay, at least for the immediate future.
Yes.
And what's crazy too is we didn't even talk about guys like David Ellis, who's becoming more and more prevalent in the offense. Miles Marshall, who's seen a few snaps out of the backfield. Remember Samson James, one of the best recruits in Indiana history? He's only a true freshman. Yeah. I mean, next year after, you think he's going to be a featured part of this offense? And Stevie Scott is just a sophomore. Yep. Like, we haven't talked about him yet. And this guy, he's like Jordan Howard 2.0, where you can hand him the football. And, okay, it's not the sexiest thing in the world. I think it's safe to say that.
He had key runs, though. He had key runs and key first downs.
You got WAP for sexy. Stevie Scott gets you the hard yards at the end of the game in the Big Ten when everyone's worn down. He plowed over a dude to score that touchdown late in the game.
I felt bad for that dude.
Yeah,
Oh,
I don't
man.
even know. Like
427 on Nebraska. I'm sorry.
I think I don't even know if he remembers his number. Like you know, it's
Yeah,
just
right.
it's unbelievable. I mean, he's so reliable late in games, and he's just in his second season. So more and more pieces are starting to rise to the top, and this is what you see at great programs where they're 3 deep, 4 deep across the board in a lot of positions, so that injuries don't affect you and suspensions, because they're going to happen. They don't affect you that much, and transfers don't either. So we're starting to see that at Indiana, and we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the offensive line, you guys. I mean, this group has, I believe, allowed the fewest sacks in the Big Ten to this point, and they've had all 3 seniors miss games at some point, with Coy Cronk, Hunter Littlejohn, and then yesterday was Simon Stepaniak, who kind of unexpectedly missed the game against Nebraska. So here we are with starting a true freshman left tackle, Matthew Bedford, sophomore right tackle in Caleb Jones. They're switching between left-handed quarterbacks and right-handed quarterbacks, but it all doesn't matter, because I guess Indiana's offensive line is just going to protect their quarterback no matter what.
With freshmen in there, no less.
I know. And that's what we're talking about. This team is so young. For every senior on the team, you can find a sophomore and a freshman playing directly next to them. And those are Tom Allen's guys. I think we talk about this with Archie, right? We talk about Archie getting his guys in. Tom Allen's getting his guys in too, and they're performing, and they're playing, and they're buying into his system. Micah McFadden yesterday, the top tackler, 11 tackles, 10 solo tackles. It's a sophomore, right? Like, this defense is, and our offensive line, and our wide receiver core, and our starting quarterbacks, and our running backs, all of them are on the younger side of the Big Ten. And we're sitting here at 6-2 with a chance to go 7-2 next week with basically a team of sophomores. Like, you tell me that at the beginning of the year, and you put it this way, I go, you're out of your mind. But they've bought into the system. Tom Allen has rallied them. And I think we've talked about the offense enough. I think we've highlighted everybody on the offense. Can we talk about Tom Allen for a second here? Because I don't think we talk about him enough on this podcast. We talk about DeBoer enough.
The coach Tom Allen, right?
Yeah, Coach Tom Allen.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. We talk about Coach. We talked about Kane Womack last week, and I was a little bit tough on him. But Coach Tom Allen and his post-game press conference, post-game interview, you can just see how much he cares about the kids. He is the perfect guy at the perfect time for this program. He's a Hoosier native. He's a defensive-minded head coach for a team that had struggled with defense for the last couple years. Coming in at the perfect time, directly after, had the whole Kevin Wilson thing, brings the love each other motto. He's gotten the guys to buy in. And I'm just so happy, and we're so lucky to have him as our head coach, because you look around the rest of the Big Ten, and you can definitely see some teams that, would like to have somebody other than their head coach be their head coach, whether it's Maryland, Rutgers, Michigan State at times complaining about Mark D'Antoni. You can go around the Big Ten, Northwestern. I mean, actually, probably Northwestern's probably not complaining about the head coach. He just brought them to the Big Ten championship game last year. But look, he's here at the perfect time, at the perfect spot. Props to Fred Glass for not listening to the rest of us podcasters who want us to hire Jeff Brom, want us to hire who's the guy in Minnesota right now? PJ Fleck. Look, I get it. Look, those would have been great hires too, I'm sure. But what Tom Allen has done as a high school head coach, nonetheless, and has come in here from USF and basically turned the program around and done something that only Bill Mallory has been able to accomplish at this program since '93. And we're gonna get 7 wins next week. I'm sitting here guaranteeing it. I'd put my life's earning on it. Like, Northwestern's not good. We have a home game. It's gonna be a packed. It's a packed crowd. And I'm sure Penix is coming back. It's about as safe as a bet as we've had on IU football in the last 20 years, other than when we play Rutgers. So, look, Coach Tom Allen, like, thank you so much for being at the program. Thank you so much for being like a model human being and a model man for these football players. It is really shown that players actually do love each other. Like, there is genuine love up and down the football team from everybody in the offense, defense, special teams. Like, the coaches, like, they all, you can tell they all get along. They're on the sidelines, they're laughing at each other, high-fiving each other, giving each other pats on the butt, normal football team things, but they're all doing it with enthusiasm and with love. And so thank you, Tom Allen. Thank you. Because now we have a program we can actually believe in as fans. And you guys better show up next week for this Northwestern game. I want to see a packed house. My parents are going to be there. Some people else better bring extra blankets because it's going to be cold in Memorial Stadium this weekend. But look, be there, show out for the football team. They deserve it. They 6-2 in October.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I think it'll be like in the 40s on Saturday night. I think that's what they're saying. It's supposed to be, not raining like 40s, it was all day yesterday here.
Windy,
it's Florida. It's Florida cold, man. It's Florida cold.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's not Indiana.
I'm a baby again.
Yeah, look, I think let me put it this way. There's a very small overlap in the Venn diagram of coaches who can coach at Indiana and those who want to coach here.
Yeah.
And I think Tom Allen is in that very small overlap. At the end of the day, it's hard to win at Indiana. You're in a brutal division. You don't have much history and tradition of success. And look, like you were just
worst win percentage since, what was it, 1946, and like all FBS programs or something.
We're going to be the first team to reach 700 losses. That's and Rutgers has had like a football team for 50 more years than us.
Yep.
Well, and that's crazy to think. Like Rutgers, let's use them as an example. They've had good, prosperous years pretty recently out in the Big East, and even 2000s. Their first year or two in the Big Ten was pretty good. It's just recently they, in the last decade or so, they've really hit a horrible rough patch. But my and some of the other teams as well. We make fun of a lot of teams like Kansas, and there are others as well in the FBS. Vanderbilt. Even then, those teams. Illinois made a Rose Bowl. They've made two BC. They made two BCS bowls in the 2000s. Yeah. I mean, Indiana doesn't have any of that. Yet Tom Allen came here, and he's got this team at 6-2. And like you said, Matt, stayed here after the Kevin Wilson stuff and after the first couple of seasons were 5-win years. Again, he's a Ben Davis coach. He has Indiana roots. And now he's got him at 6-2, and Matt, like you said, 7 almost seems inevitable coming up this coming Saturday. I mean, Northwestern, they're a tough program. It's just this year that the talent is kind of going through a new cycle there, and we'll get into Northwestern more on Tuesday. But all in all, this is why Tom Allen has worked, and I get it. People wanted to see results. Again, 5 wins the first 2 years weren't good enough, and there's no doubt about it. But Indiana, if nothing else, even with those 5-win years, they elevated themselves from a dumpster fire to competitive. And Kevin Wilson did some of that and got them up to that competitive level. But Tom Allen's kept that going. And, even the first 2 years, they swept a pretty decent ACC school in Virginia, home and home. They were ranked
this year.
Yeah,
they were right in the games a lot of times against Ohio State and Michigan and Michigan State. They beat Michigan State. So, at the end of the day, this is now what Tom Allen is. Let's face it, he's capable coming up here of being not just a good coach at Indiana, but kind of a historic one. I mean, it's almost crazy to think about in year 3.
Oh, he is. He's reached bowl eligibility. I think he's the fastest IU coach to reach bowl eligibility.
There you go. I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg at this point. It's you're going to hear more sort of program best accomplishments that you haven't heard of in like 30 or 40 or 50 or how many ever years coming up. and it's all because of his vision, his belief. It's what he's had a mindset coming in from day one, and you're seeing that pay dividends now. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Like, I don't know about Big Ten Coach of the Year. Ryan Day at Ohio State is probably the front runner there.
Yeah.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah. If Ohio State, for whatever reason, loses to a team like Penn State, well, then you got to say, well, James Franklin probably will get the call there. But it's just a very respectable effort on Allen's perspective to be on the top 3 or 4 this year in a very tough conference, to be in that conversation. So good job by him. He's a guy that cares, and I think that's probably what IU fans should appreciate about him the most. It's very easy to come to IU and come in with your chest puffed out and saying, "Oh, I know what I'm doing. I've been to big programs before. We're gonna get this right." And then you get your ass kicked by Ohio State in week 3 by 40 points or whatever, and it's like, well,
at home.
Look, yeah, here we go again, right? We won 5 games in year 1, 5 games in year 2. And now we got destroyed in week 3 this year. Is it going to be another disappointing season? It's been the exact opposite. It's exceeded everyone's expectations, and here IU is 6-2. It's kind of crazy.
And looking ahead at the rest of the schedule,
I was about to get into that. Yeah,
winnable.
Especially when this year was supposed to be the bridge year between those young players getting experience. And because everyone was talking about this year, it's like, okay, they're going to do some things. Let's hope they can get to bowl eligibility. If you heard various podcasts, they talked about maybe 4 wins, maybe 5 wins at most. Let's just bridge the gap, get Penix some reps, get that young offensive line, young secondary, young defense to where they can go next year and they can start making a push to 7-8 wins on the season. They're already 6-2, and we talked about 2 to 3 weeks ago. We said when Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern, and Purdue came into play, when Indiana was 4-2 and they were winning games, almost beat Michigan State, we were talking about we were trying to rank those games from least likely to win to most likely to win. And I think we all agreed still, even though Nebraska wasn't the type of team that at least the preseason people had, which is a discussion for another time. But we thought on the road to Nebraska, which of course is going to, by far out of all those teams, going to be the most hostile environment and still probably the best team out of those 4 teams. That was going to be the hardest victory to get. Yeah, and especially you look at coming off of a road game against Maryland, they got to travel literally more than halfway across the country, 2 straight road games in a row. It just panned for that one loss that Indiana's going to have to suffer. Then they can go get a win against Northwestern. No, they came up with a backup quarterback, and they were still able to win the least likely game that we fans, not just us, but fans thought they were going to lose. And that's, I think, where all this optimism comes from. And again, literally at the beginning of the season, everyone made fun of that 9-win, and it's going to come back every time now. But it is actually a real thing and almost something that fans are starting to expect this season. 6-2, you've got Northwestern, who has fallen off a cliff more than anyone has even thought. They lost to Illinois by a lot, or no, Purdue lost to Illinois, but they lost to like 20-0 to Iowa. That's a game that's almost that's an expected win at this point. Purdue just lost to Illinois. So those 2 wins, and they should be wins, I think, with the way this Indiana team is now playing. And that's 8-2. That's 8-2, and then there's a bowl game, and that's before we even talk about a chance of an upset of another team. That's 8-2 between, depending on what bowl game you actually get, and it's just another step closer to actually thinking that 9-win Indiana, the biggest almost con of the decade, the century of everything. And it's actually in play now, let alone, now Michigan did look good yesterday against Notre Dame. And yes, Indiana and Notre Dame are now tied with records, by the way.
The best team in the state.
Best team in the state. They were above Notre Dame and S&P Plus that just came out about an hour ago. You look at those 2 games should be victories. It's 8-2, and we'll say Penn State still lost. I still think Penn State's doing really well. We're just playing the game. So that's 8-3. You look at Michigan. There is a legit shot.
I said we're going to beat them.
Exactly.
I did.
And there's a legit shot now that fans are seeing, hey, even if things hold true, they beat Northwestern, lose to Penn State. That's 7-3 going into the Michigan game, which they've started selling in advertising tickets to Michigan today, which is good for them. Packed house, optimistic team, fired up team, that's a chance for a victory. To where if all goes well, that's a legit shot at a chance at 9-3 on the season, 8-4 almost at worst. And how crazy is that? At the beginning of this season, we'd be talking about at worst. We're kind of thinking that Indiana should be 8-4 before going into a bowl game.
I said at the beginning of the year, and I will quote my preview. I said this will be the best Indiana team in the last 20 years, and we'll end up like 4-8. And I'm so happy I was so wrong, because we're looking here. We actually
Already
won games that we were
and there's
supposed
4
to win.
games left.
I know. I'll take it. And look, 9 wins. I Noah just mentioned it. Extremely possible. But then you look ahead to next year, right? Like the excitement for this, it gets easier. The schedule's easier next year. We have a more experienced team next year. We have another year under the
IU
offense.
football team is better.
The IU football team,
It's not just the opponents are worse.
Yeah.
Our team is better.
You're looking ahead of schedule. And to make a parallel, because we're going to talk about basketball on Tuesday, because, the first exhibition game is on Tuesday. Nathan's going to be there. It's going to be fun. Look, basketball's back. But I'll make a parallel to IU basketball. This football team is the football version of the 2012 team. A 2012 IU basketball team. I will go out there and say that they're a year ahead of schedule. And they have a superstar in Michael Penix there, who has shown up and shown out. And Wab Fillier, you combine both of them. He's Victor Oladipo. Look, that 2012 team, that Indiana basketball team is this Indiana's football team. We're ahead of schedule. We're surprising people. And we just need our Kentucky upset. So I'm looking at you, Michigan, because it's happening. All right, I'm putting it on the record right now. Michigan's going down in the Rock in November, the weekend before Thanksgiving. It's happening, folks.
And let's say that happens. I mean, can I bump this up to 10 win Indiana? Like,
yeah,
right?
For the bowl game. Yes,
right. I mean, it's obnoxious. But right,
it doesn't matter.
I know, yeah.
It's funny. I remember at the start of the season, Vegas had the over under for IU wins at 6.5, and I was looking at that, going, "Are you guys serious? Like, are you guys for real?
Really?
like, there's no way." Everyone's gonna put the money on the under, and I guess this is why Vegas is a booming metropolis, right?
That's why they get paid a lot of money to do what they do.
The smartest people in the world are sitting there putting the over-under.
I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but I have to imagine more than 50% of people had the under on that.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a heavy under.
A state like Northwestern, Michigan, Purdue, Michigan's a lot better today than I thought they were, say, back on Friday. I was surprised they won by 30 points against Notre Dame. But here we go.
Atrocious.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, can we start whispering about 10, which is just unreal? Maybe. But
let's get one at a time. Just like Coach said last week, let's get to 6 first before we get to 9. So let's get to 7 next, and then see how they do against Penn State. Let's not get blown out by Penn State, I would think.
Yeah, we can quietly whisper about it in the back channels. 10 wins is possible, and Crimson Quarry was just underestimating this team. No, but look, you look ahead to next year. Schedule gets easier. Players get better. Players return. We get some new freshmen in that are exciting. One of the better classes in Indiana history is coming in next year as well. And then you look at the year after that, right? I tweeted something and it got picked up by a couple places. But look, the next year and a half is very exciting for IU football. And in a way in which we have not seen in Bloomington maybe ever. Because you look back at the 90s teams and it was always like, well, we got Anthony Thompson, right? Like, or the late 80s, we got Anthony Thompson. Like, we're going to go as far as he takes us. And in this era, it's like you look up and down the roster. We got Penix, we've got Wap Fillier, we've got Peyton Hendershot, we've got Matthew Bedford, the offensive line. We've got Micah McFadden, a sophomore on the defense. We have Tywon Mullen, who made excellent plays, and we haven't talked about yet, on the defense yesterday and made a pivotal third down pass breakout. Who made a great play. Tywon Mullen on the defense. We got people coming in next year. Our defensive line is almost all sophomores who are making the majority of minutes. Like, this team is young. I haven't even mentioned Stevie Scott yet. Our starting running back is a sophomore, the best recruit we've had in the last 15 years in Samson James, who Nathan talked about, is a freshman. Like, this program is going places, and soon we're going to have a target on our back because people are going to be like, we actually have to game plan against these guys. Like, we have to, Ohio State and Michigan State are actually have to get up on a Sunday and actually focus on us, where they could have probably slept in. Years before, slept in on a Sunday, kind of walked and moseyed on in.
Slept in on a Saturday too.
Yes, they could have slept in on a Saturday. Well, no, they're not sleeping in on a Saturday because they have a 12 o'clock game on Saturday because they're playing us at noon because we're not good enough to get nighttime games. But now they're up late on Saturday, getting up early on Sunday for us. So, this program is in a place that it hasn't been in almost an eternity. Basically, I wasn't alive the last time this program was in this place. And you guys as fans, the listeners, as fans, as people who follow this program closely, you should be excited. You have every right to be excited. If you want to go out there and tweet your heart's content about 10 Indiana, you can do that. And I give you the stamp of approval. Go ahead. Go do that. Go be excited. This team deserves it. They deserve your love and attention. Go give them love and attention, please.
All right, you got Matt's stamp of approval. Nathan, you got some last wrap-up thoughts real quick?
Honestly, I really don't think I do. That's pretty much it. Northwestern should be fun on Saturday. We'll get into that. That is a night game, which kind of surprised me when the timings came out back on Monday. But under the lights, 7 o'clock. Indiana should be 7-2 at this time next week. Who'd have thought?
Mm-hmm. I would be surprised to see not only our best performance on Saturday, but this team improve drastically over the next couple games. And I'd like to point this out. I think the pressure's off for them now. I think that the internal pressure of them getting to 6 wins and getting bowl eligibility, because they said at the beginning of the year that their goal wasn't to get to a bowl game. Their goal was to win the bowl game. And they have now secured bowl eligibility. That is one part done. I think we're going to go see them fly around the field on Saturday to their heart's content. They have nothing to lose. They're going to go out there and, if they want to go and get that interception, they're not worried about that guy breaking it for a 70-yard touchdown. They're just going to go and they're going to break to the ball as fast as they possibly can and try to make that play because they don't care. The pressure is off. There's nobody in their heads going, well, you know what? We were 5-7 last year and 5-7 the year before, and we lost to Purdue. It's going to happen again. That little voice inside their head, that can't happen anymore, right? We've got 6 wins. Nobody can take a win away from us.
Well,
I mean,
I'm kidding.
Okay, the NCAA can take wins away from us, but let's not even allude to that. I don't think Tom Allen's the person that's letting strippers around the program. At Rick Pitino. Anyways, look, the pressure's off. We're going to see a team that looks like the pressure's off in the next coming weeks, and the coaching staff is just going to go, hey, go out there and do your thing. And they're going to go out there and do our thing, and we should celebrate the fact that the pressure's off on the Indiana football team. And this is glorious, folks. I'm so happy. I can't even formulate a cohesive thought at this moment about how happy I am. So there you go.
There you go. That's going to wrap it up. Next on Tuesday, we're thinking now that we can just preview Northwestern and talk about the exhibition game. I'm not sure if we're going to have Nathan on or not since he'll be there at the game, but that's what we'll get to you. It'll be a good podcast on Tuesday since we'll actually get to see real basketball. We'll get to preview a game that Indiana football. Yep, another game that Indiana football is now expected to win, which think of the amount of games we've talked about expectations and winning for football.
What's the line on the Northwestern game, by the way? Do we know that yet?
I don't. I think it was 14 was the I think it opened up at the moment. So we're recording this on Sunday right after the initial things came out. But that's going to wrap it up for our 112th show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you all so much for joining out. We really appreciate your support, especially when we have an extra podcast. We'll be back tomorrow for an edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. News and updates come through Twitter, so you can see that we have an extra podcast like this. So subscribe to us so you don't miss out those weekly and extra shows. Most importantly, if you really enjoy our show, leave us a review. iTunes or Facebook is usually the best spot. Tell a friend, share our links. Your support is how we grow this podcast so we can reach more passionate fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace. Go